Tonight we answer a subscriber question on how to get the best sound out of your Giant Squid Audio Labs lav mic. I recently received a question from one of our subscribers named Matt. Matt said, "Hey Curtis, I purchased the Giant Squid Audio Mono Lavalier mic per your recommendation in conjunction with the Zoom H1 per your video best cheap lav mic. Would you share your EQ settings or other recording settings you used to achieve the quality of audio you were able to produce in this video? It seems to have good bass pickup, but also very clear. I'm experimenting with 40 to 75 audio gain on the Zoom H1 and am playing around with noise removal, bass boost, and amplification in Audacity, but what I would really like to do is match the quality of audio you've demonstrated here. Thanks in advance, Matt." Well, Matt, I think that's a fantastic question, and let's run through quickly what I do with my recordings through the Giant Squid Audio lav mic into the Zoom H1. Again, for those of you that haven't seen that video yet, go back and take a look at it. Just a quick review of that lav mic. I think it's probably the best lav mic out there for $40 or less. And I record into the Zoom H1 with it. That whole package, it comes out to about $130, $140, and it's a fantastic way to get much better sound for your video than if you use the camera's mic. All right, so let's take a look at what I do. So once I've recorded a signal and I bring it into my audio editing software, in this particular case I'm using Reaper, but again, this will apply to pretty much any audio editing software. You just have to find where these particular settings are in each of your programs. By the way, this is a great program. It costs about $60. If you don't have one yet and you want one that's full-featured, this is a great one to go. It's a great step up from Audacity. But again, Audacity can do most of the stuff can do all the stuff we're going to talk about here today. All right, so the first thing you'll notice is that I'm actually getting what appears to be a stereo signal. In fact, it's not really stereo. It's just dual mono. It's you'll notice the waveform is exactly the same on the top or left channel as it is on the bottom or right channel. And we don't really need that. Since they're exactly the same, we can really just go to a mono signal. And in fact, that makes it a little easier for the computer to process. So I'm going to go ahead and choose item settings and take channel mode mono left. So now we're back down to one channel, which is really what we recorded anyway. Voice is really just a mono signal. So there's not really any need to do any fancy stereo stuff here. All right. Once I've done that, the next thing you'll notice is my waveform here is a little bit on the quiet side. The way this is represented here is the middle line represents the quietest signal, and the edges of the waveform here, the top and the bottom, represent the loudest. And so our signal is actually somewhat quiet, and we want to bump that up a little bit. We want to make it a lot more present or sound louder. And the way we're going to do that is to use normalization. So I'm going to just right click here, choose item processing and normalize items. You can see our waveform suddenly got bigger. So what that means, it's going to be a little bit louder when we play it back now, which is good because we don't want our listeners to have to crank up their speakers it causes problems as they're moving from video to video. So we really want to get the loudest we can out of the bass setting on their speakers. So that's the first thing I do. Next thing I do is apply some equalization. What I've noticed on the Giant Squid Audio lav mic is that it's a pretty good overall even response, but it is a little bit more sensitive in sort of the mid-range, specifically at about 1000 hertz or 1 kilohertz. And so what that means is that frequency is sort of emphasized a little bit more, and it gives you kind of a nasally sound, just very slightly, or kind of that telephone sound, that sound kind of the effect that people sometimes use when they're trying to represent a signal that's coming over a telephone. It kind of has that nasally sound. So we want to get rid of that. And the way we're going to do that is use some EQ. So I'm just going to use an EQ plugin here. This is very similar to what you'll see in pretty much any audio editing software, In this particular case, this is called a parametric equalizer. These are, again, very common. And what's represented on the horizontal axis here are all the different frequencies. You have your bass on the left-hand side. You have your very high frequencies on the right-hand side. So if we're listening to music, this would be the cymbals up here. And this would be the bass, drum, and the electric bass down on this side of the frequency chart. But where we're most sensitive on this particular mic, the Giant Squid Audio, is right here in the 1 kilohertz range is what I've found. So what I'll typically do is just put a point right there on 1 kilohertz or 1000 hertz. And once I've done that, I will reduce the gain by about 6 decibels. And you'll see as I slide that to the left to reduce it by 6 decibels, we get this curve here where we're actually cutting part of the signal out of this part of the frequency, or out of the overall signal. Now, You have another setting here called bandwidth, and this is measured in octaves in this particular case. Sometimes in some other programs it's called Q, just the letter Q. That refers to how wide of a cut you want to do. Now watch when I slide this, you can see you can narrow the cut or you can widen it. What we want to do is, typically I find myself in the I want to do a kind of a 1.5 octaves, maybe even up to 2, depending on how things are sounding, but somewhere in that range. And that's pretty much all I'll do. And in fact, once I've set it there, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start playing it, and I can kind of tweak these settings as I'm playing and listening to it, and kind of dial in the sound I want. Now, that's one place in Audacity where you're going to run into limitations. Audacity works a little differently. It doesn't let you make those changes real time as you're listening to your recording. You actually have to choose the settings, apply the settings, and then you can listen to it. So that's where you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage with Audacity. But again, it can do this. You just can't listen to it while you're tweaking it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So we've got that with our EQ. Then I will also add one more effect, and this is where I want to sort of maximize the loudness of the signal. So I will use, in this particular case, I use a master limiter. You could also use a compressor, and it's going to be another topic that we'll have to cover another time because it's a very, there's a lot to know about compression and limiting and so on and so forth. But this is one option here. This is a free plugin that I have. I don't know how to say this exactly. I think it's Carhus Audio, something like that. But this is a free classic master limiter. They call it a classic master limiter. And it has one setting, threshold. And this allows you to essentially take all of your signal and bring the level on the overall signal up while preventing your peaks, your loudest parts, from actually exceeding the allowable range and actually starting to make that nasty peaking noise. So what I do in this case is I go ahead and play my signal, or through my recording, and I kind of keep my eyes on this to see how much it's squashing the peaks. And every once in a while we'll get the lights flash on and off here. You'll see here in just a second. See, they flashed a little bit. We don't want it to be on and pegged all the time. What we're trying to do is watch our signal down here and make sure that we're peaking in the -0.3 range, but that we do have a little bit of dynamic range still. So that's how you can kind of maximize your signal. So in this case, I'm just going to stick with that threshold, -12. That seems to be working great for us. And that's really all I do to my audio signals for my videos. Just so you get an idea, again, I reduce it to a mono signal from a stereo signal. I normalize it. I add EQ by cutting the 1000 hertz or 1 kilohertz range, and then I use a master limiter to maximize the loudness. And if you do that, I think you'll be pretty much in the same range where we are on the videos here. Hope that was helpful for you. Thanks for the question, Matt. If any of you have questions or comments down below, again, we went through this very quickly, so hit us with questions down below. And if you would like to receive more of these videos and you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe up above. Thanks again for checking out the show.